Good evening and welcome back to Center Point. I'm Joe Gumm. We certainly appreciate you joining us this evening. We begin tonight with the countdown to the Iowa Caucuses, the first big step, a real step, to see how real voters are responding to the challengers for the Republican nomination for president. We have a veteran political editor standing by to go through exactly what to watch for, including, first, what's the latest on the remaining challengers to former President Trump? Secondly, what are the expectations for the Iowa outcome and how will they affect the national spin on who's up and who's down laid out against those expectations? And third, what sort of surprise could happen between now and Iowa, as they have in the past, that would affect the outcome? Joining us now is the very wise political editor, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Bob, welcome back and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Joe. It's going to be an interesting year, to say the least.
It is certainly going to be a busy year. First question to you, Bob. For months, the polls have shown Trump far ahead, but Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy have spent months traveling the state. So what's the latest polling on the outcome? And don't worry, we're going to get to the expectations game here momentarily.
Yeah, it looks like it's a race for second between DeSantis and Haley at the moment. Former President Donald Trump is way up. Remember, he did not win Iowa in 2016. His organization, though, in the state is so much stronger than it was back then. Really who's going to win is not going to be determined, I think. I think Trump's going to win big. It's just a matter of how big. But the interesting thing, because the race is not going to end with Iowa, is who finishes second. Is it going to be DeSantis or Haley? And that person is going to have some momentum going forward.
Well, and we know that there have been times, Bob, when the Iowa voters have upset the pollsters. Rick Santorum went to all corners of Iowa. Now, DeSantis and Ramaswamy have done the same thing. Some of the late rallies for Donald Trump have been canceled due to weather. How fluid is this right now?
I think it's pretty fluid. I think Trump has been smart in reminding voters they have to show up. It's going to be a cold night, it appears, from the forecast. Trump doesn't have an enthusiasm problem. His supporters do back him. But how strong do they back him? Could they be swayed by last-minute arguments by DeSantis? DeSantis has really invested a lot in Iowa. So Iowa is more important to DeSantis than it is to Haley. But at some point, you got to start winning states. And you can't beat Trump by finishing second. So what are they going to win? Are they going to New Hampshire? Is Haley going to win her home state of South Carolina? If you look at the polls, Trump is winning basically everywhere.
Well, we know that Haley said if Iowa doesn't get it right, that New Hampshire will correct that. Is it your sense, Bob, that Iowa voters prefer policy content versus the usual food fighting among the candidates?
Well, the base in Iowa is very conservative. It's gotten more conservative. And honestly, that's part of the reason it hasn't been a barometer of who's going to win the nomination in most years. John McCain, when he won the nomination, he finished fourth. Now, he was never going to do well in Iowa because he was a big critic of ethanol. But at the same time, I think policies are very important in Iowa, and also showing up, as you mentioned, Joe, showing up in all those counties. That's very important. That's what Senator Chuck Grassley has done for years, and he's been in the Senate forever. And that's a big part of the reason, because he goes to see the people.
Bob, when it comes to the expectations game, how do the candidates do against the expectations, and who makes those judgments?
Well, the good news for Trump is that he's way ahead in the polls. The bad news is expectations are very high for the former president. So if he does not win in a romp, then that's going to be the story. If he dominates, that will be the story. It's going to be one of those two tales. DeSantis, I think, really has to finish second. Nikki Haley has been investing a lot in New Hampshire. She's got momentum in New Hampshire more so than in Iowa. So while she could finish third, I don't think it's going to hurt her that much, but she's going to have to at least finish second in New Hampshire. And then then when they go to South Carolina, that's her home state. Right now, polls show Trump winning her home state big. And remember, Senator Marco Rubio, who ran for president in 2016, the end of his campaign came in his home state in Florida when Trump easily beat him. So that's something to watch. Trump wants to deliver that knockout punch in South Carolina.
Bob, I remember watching not too many years back, and the national media was following a white van through the dead of night. The van was supposedly carrying the final ballots in Iowa that still needed to be counted. Maybe it wasn't a surprise, but tell us any interesting loose ends that you've been witness to in years past so we can sort of have that extra bag of popcorn ready while we're watching?
Well, that's going to be a storyline because it's caucus and it's a very complicated system, and it takes a while. And you mentioned the white van. Listen, Iowa has had problems in the past, so that's what people are going to be watching. And part of it has been whether it's on the Democratic side between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders 4 years ago. Biden did not do well in Iowa. But some of these races have been so close. You mentioned Santorum. The Cruz race with Trump was pretty close. So we may not know, certainly on the Iowa caucus on Monday night. We may have to wait until the wee hours of Tuesday. But we'll see if they've improved their process and if there are any white trucks running around with extra ballots.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch and interesting, not boring at all. Bob Cusack with The Hill. We appreciate you joining us here on Centerpoint.
Thanks, Joe.